I would like you all, if you've got a tinfoil hat, take it out and put it on, because we're going to talk about conspiracy theories. Specifically, I'm going to talk to you about the recent release of the JFK files and America's increasingly in love with conspiracy theories, and then what that suggests about our political system and the state of our democracy. Now, if you've noticed recently, the Trump administration began releasing documents, a sort of final document dump from the JFK assassination. And starting on October 26th, the administration released roughly 2,800 files, all relating to the Kennedy assassination. And this was the last bit of information that was really hanging out there. Now, the Trump administration held on to 300 documents for national security reasons, but they've pledged to release those in the next 6 months or so. So this was a big deal for those of you that are interested in information about the Kennedy assassination. Now, not surprisingly, Trump announced this over Twitter. So he said, JFK files are being carefully released. In the end, there will be great transparency. It is my hope that to get just about everything to the public. Now, my favorite part about this is he tweeted this out, and it's sandwiched in between a good luck tweet to Joy Villa and then a happy birthday greeting to Lee Greenwood. That's how you do it. All right, he also, a couple days later, on October 28th, sent out another tweet saying that the JFK files are released and long ahead of schedule. Now, interestingly, in 1992, Congress passed a law that mandated that all of these files had to be released by October 26th, 2017. So I'll give him on time, but he's not getting early. All right, so for the last couple of weeks, historians, political scientists, and all variety of conspiracy theorists have been diving into these documents to see if there are any hidden gems about the Kennedy assassination that we didn't know. And to be honest, there haven't been any groundbreaking details. There were a couple of exciting things. One was this letter from Robert Rawls. And in this letter, he talks about having a conversation that he was in a bar in New Orleans 10 days or 2 weeks prior to the assassination when he heard a man try to bet another man $100 that President Kennedy would be dead within 2 weeks or 3 weeks. That's a big bit of news. Yet, if you keep reading on, he does not recall ever seeing the man before and is not certain he would recognize the man if he ever saw him again. He admits to being somewhat intoxicated and said the man was also intoxicated in an intoxicated condition. He advised that at the time he paid no attention to the man because he thought it was just drunk talk and a drunk will bet on anything. That didn't really break the case. But those of you who followed the JFK assassination know that it is the granddaddy of all assassinations. So for 50 years, Americans have been obsessing about this. And even today, over 60% of Americans think there was a conspiracy. Over 60% of Americans think there was somebody more than just Oswald involved. And somewhat interestingly, there's bipartisan support for this conspiracy theory. We'll talk about that as we move forward. Usually there's not bipartisan support, but both Democrats and Republicans think there was a conspiracy here. And I'm also going to say that there's just a fantastic level of irony that Donald Trump is the one releasing the JFK files. It just doesn't get any better than that. All right, and I think we need to talk about that. We need to talk about the way in which the Trump administration and that individual speaks to the broader dynamic of conspiracy theory. But before I do that, I want to tell you a story. I love telling stories. I'm going to tell you about the Umbrella Man. The Umbrella Man. The Umbrella Man is my favorite Kennedy conspiracy theory. Now, Kennedy was assassinated on November 22nd, 1963. We all know a little bit about those details. On that day, it rained in the morning. But by the time that JFK and the presidential limousine was making its way through Dallas, the skies had cleared. And it was a beautiful day, beautiful sunny day. A day that nobody would need an umbrella. And in fact, if you look at pictures from the day, nobody has an umbrella. It's a beautiful day. Yet as the presidential limo makes its way through Dealey Plaza and starts to head down toward the fateful spot, a man starts to walk from the grassy knoll down to the sidewalk. Let's call him the Umbrella Man. As he walks down, and as the presidential limo comes up to him, he opens his black umbrella. He raises it over his head, and he begins to spin it clockwise. Here's a picture of the Umbrella Man. Moments after he does this, the shots rain into the limo, killing Kennedy. Now, what's interesting is Tink Thompson was the first academic who cataloged the existence of the Umbrella Man. He also named the Umbrella Man, which is a fantastic name. And so once he does that, he writes this book, 6 Seconds in Dallas, and says, this is the Umbrella Man. Conspiracy theory just exploded. Who was this guy? Why was he there? Why was he at the exact location at the exact time of the assassination? Is there any innocent explanation for this? And what was with that umbrella? So the speculation begins, and the American public becomes consumed with this. Some suggested that maybe he was there to act as a signal, so that he was signaling to the shooters, either to go ahead or to keep shooting. Others suggested that his job was to distract Kennedy, to get him to look in a different direction or distract the Secret Service. Some even suggested that the umbrella was a weapon, and that there was a secret launch tube in there that would shoot a flechette or a dart. That's what killed Kennedy. That's what caused the hole in the throat. Right? So there was all this speculation, and the American public was consumed. In 1967, John Updike wrote a piece in which he said, the Umbrella Man hangs over American history like a noose, right? That like a fetish, like we can't get enough of this. So in 1978, the House Select Committee on Assassinations asked for the Umbrella Man to come forward. And he did. He came forward and he testified. His name is Louis Stephen Witt. And he came to Congress and he brought his umbrella. And he explained that his umbrella was a private protest, a silent protest. And it wasn't a protest of John F. Kennedy or any of John F. Kennedy's policies. It was a protest of Joseph P. Kennedy, Kennedy's father, who was ambassador to the United Kingdom in 1938 and also endorsed Neville Chamberlain's policy of appeasement. So the protest, the umbrella, was a reference to Neville Chamberlain and his umbrella. And it was a protest against the policy of appeasement. That's a fantastic story. And it's true, or at least I take it to be true, and most historians take it to be true, that that's what was really going on. And Tink Thompson, who wrote this book, said this is a cautionary tale. This should force us to think more about our tendency to be lured in by conspiracy theory. We always assume there's a nefarious, evil motivation going on. And sometimes they're not. And conspiracy theories can be very dangerous. Now, revealing the truth about the Umbrella Man didn't solve all the conspiracies or didn't stop all the other conspiracies. If it wasn't the Umbrella Man, well, then it was the mob, or it was the Cubans, or maybe it was somebody within the U.S. government. In 2013, Roger Stone wrote a book in which he directly pointed the finger at Lyndon Johnson. He says, I must make the case that Lyndon Baines Johnson had John Fitzgerald Kennedy murdered in Dallas to become president. Yeah, whoa, that's a big claim. And this was written in 2013. Some of you may be familiar with Roger Stone. He's been on InfoWars. He's a friend to conspiracy theories. He is also a formal and informal advisor to our President Donald Trump. And he is the individual who helped push Donald Trump to make sure that these JFK documents were released and released on time. Stone also worked in the Nixon administration, and maybe most disturbingly, he has a tattoo of Richard Nixon on his back. That's true. That's no conspiracy. That's a real picture. And as I look out on the audience today, I see a lot of bright and promising students, and many of you may go on to do fantastic things, and some of you may actually go on to work for a presidential administration. But I warn you, please, no matter what happens, if you end up working for a presidential administration, please say no to presidential back tattoos. That's a real hashtag. It's never worth it. So, all right, so Roger Stone, there is this sense of conspiracy. And I guess the larger point is not so much about presidential back tattoos, but this should be a warning. The lesson of the Umbrella Man and the broader fear that conspiracy theories present. And I would suggest to you that we've always had conspiracy theories, we've entered a new stage of conspiracy theory. And that's because the President of the United States is now a willing participant in these conspiracy theories. And you can all think of the examples. There's the birther example in which Trump suggested that Barack Obama was not born in the United States. He's also suggested that, I'll try to think all of them now, right? That Hillary Rodham Clinton was involved in the assassination of Rich. My favorite is that, the birther certificate. Oh, Ted Cruz, that's what I was trying to think of, that Ted Cruz's father was linked to the JFK assassination. Vaccines linked to autism. So he's somebody who feels comfortable with conspiracy theories. And this is a unique development, something that we need to think a little bit more deeply about. Because normally, conspiracy theories come from the outside. It's the weak that use conspiracy theories to attack the powerful. So it's the underdogs who are questioning, attacking the establishment, the insiders, the elitists who are trying to manipulate the system. So by nature, conspiracy theories are outsiders. They're underdogs. And if we think about the campaign that Donald Trump ran, it was a very effective campaign because he ran it as an outsider. And he relied on conspiracy theories to get to this point. But then this raises a deeper question. What happens when a conspiracy theorist is in the center of office? What happens when the conspiracy theories, who are usually on the margins, suddenly find themselves in the center of power? This is a major development. And how do we as a political system and how does a democracy respond? There have been many who've talked about this idea that the fear and what's happening is that we're squishing the space between truth and fiction, between entertainment and news. Like that distance is getting closer and closer. It's hard to distinguish between fact and fiction. And this is a concerning development. So as we think about the dangers of conspiracy theories, we also need to think about how we confront them. Kurt Anderson wrote a book in which he talked about this move towards relativism and the danger that it presents. And he suggested, and he pointed to an example which I absolutely loved. He talks about professional wrestling. And that in the early 2000s, professional wrestling realized that they didn't have to pretend to be real anymore. That people didn't care. It didn't matter if it was real or not. And this is something that struck me because as I was growing up, I was a huge professional wrestling fan. And me and my friends, we spent hours and hours and hours debating of whether it was real or whether it was fake. Yes. But now that doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter because the fans are happy not knowing, just accepting that it's not real. And I think at some level that should get our society to think deeper about this and what this really means. So as we move forward, and I guess my kind of final point here is as we transition out of this, we need to think about the ways in which our democracy can respond to the threat posed by a shift towards conspiracy theory. And I would suggest that this isn't just on the right. It's also on the left. Fairleigh Dickinson University did a poll recently, and they found that party affiliation is strongly linked with whichever conspiracy theory you're supportive of. So on the left, Democrats tend to believe at high numbers that the reason Donald Trump doesn't release his tax returns is that he's trying to hide his connections to the Russians. Republicans don't believe that at all. But in turn, Republicans genuinely believe that Barack Obama, in office and afterwards, was trying to hide something about his early life, that there was something to his birthplace that's really there. Democrats don't believe that at all. So we've entered an area where we're more comfortable with our beliefs than we are with facts. And that's a really, really scary place to be. So I'd like us to return briefly to the Kennedy assassination and think more about that. If we look at the totality of that evidence, the most plausible explanation is that Oswald killed Kennedy and he did it alone. If we look at the totality of evidence, that's still the most compelling evidence. But that's not very fun. But I think the reality is the political world we've entered means that we have to approach issues with greater clarity. And we have to avoid the lure into conspiracy theory, whether we're on the left or whether we're on the right. Because our democracy is shifting into a really, really dangerous situation where conspiracy theories are no longer at the margins, but they're at the center. And I think if we bring greater clarity to this, we might be able to overcome this. And then potentially address some even bigger problems, like 12 million Americans believe that lizard people run our country. That's real data. Thank you.